Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Composer Breakdown. Today we are going to be listening to November Rain by Guns N' Roses. This song, I think, came out in the early 90s. I'm not mistaken, it was 1992. And it's got 1.8 billion views on YouTube. So that's all I got to say. I mean, clearly this is a very popular song. And it's a ballad nonetheless, if I recall. So something I've grown up listening to for quite some time. And well, before we dive in, if you end up liking this video, by the way, leave a thumbs up. That really does help a lot. And also subscribe down below. It's completely free, and you can always change your mind in the future. One other thing I need to address is going forward, excuse me, I will be using live versions of songs going forward, not because I want to, but because I have to. As far as I'd like to claim fair use on my videos for, analyzing, YouTube basically flags anything that isn't the original. Trust me, I'd love to use the original of everything, but Pantera took down my video, just completely outright blocked it. I was going to do Walk by Pantera last week, and that didn't happen because they outright blocked my video from going up. So this is why I have to use live versions. So I do apologize in the future. I know the originals are better. I also take it that you clicked on this video, you probably know the song. So if you ever want to actually go back and listen to the original, you're free to do so at any point. Okay, so November Rain. Let's go ahead and get started. So this is clearly the piano intro, and what key are we in? Well, I think it's kind of obvious. We've already settled it down. It's B major is what we're going to be going off of. Now, the progression that Axel is playing right now, we actually, by the way, don't start in B major, if I recall. Something like that. And we actually start in E major. Something like this, So the chords that we're playing is we're actually starting on E major, and E major in B major is a 4-chord, subdominant chord. We'll need some kind of cadence like that to let us know that we are in B major. And we actually will get that in due time. Before I go any further, I think I should also address my videos, my content as a whole. Music theory, by the way, I will go into depth later on when we get to the for that really nice chord progression near the end. One thing I should address is, and make you aware of, is I know I get a lot of people who, play guitar, who are in a band, who really don't have too much music theory knowledge. So hi, welcome to the channel. Don't be too intimidated by the music theory. I try to make it down to earth and simple, but I think it's also really important to address the importance of music theory. Music theory is a descriptive procedure rather than a prescriptive procedure, where it aims to help describe what's going on in the music rather than be a set of rules and principles dictating what we can and cannot do. Let's just make that very clear. That's all music theory is it's a means of trying to describe what's going on in a piece of music. And about 90% of the time, it works pretty well. And it really does help open up your ears and make you realize sometimes the little nuances that we pass up every so often. So let's get back to the music. So we start on E major, and then we go to a C sharp minor chord, and a C sharp minor chord acts as also a subdominant. So it's just a 2 chord. Adding a 7th onto it as such creates a 2/7 chord, and you notice that our E major chord is hidden right there. So a 2/7. So that's why both of these chords are pretty much they function the same way. They're a subdominant. They prepare the dominant. But in this case, we don't do this. We just go straight to 1. And this was something, by the way, back in the 19th century, started becoming a little bit more and more popular. You might have heard something like this. Yeah, isn't that nice? So that would have been really cool if they did here. So maybe the progression could have gone like... So you see this in the music of Chopin and Liszt and Schumann, all those guys. So we're talking like 1850s-ish, a little bit earlier, a little bit after. But that would have been super cool if you got this G sharp and then just lowered it by 1 note. Oh, that's just one of those chords that just does me in. It's so nice. Anyhow, he doesn't do that. Let's keep going. So he just goes through this. He's just playing off the same thing, just establishing. Got the strings coming in. And of course, the guitars finally come in. I like how the guitars, they sneak themselves in. You know, they don't just make them, it's not a big entrance. It's a very subtle entrance. And Slash looking better than ever. Same with Axl coming in right here. I think that's absolutely wonderful. It's when I look into your eyes, I can see a love restrained. So it's snuck in here. We're still floating. We get a sense that we haven't really solidly landed yet, tonally speaking. We still are anticipating a nice strong cadence, and that'll come in just a little bit of time. But you notice how we're just suspended right now. Do you feel that? We're just kind of... This is what we call it. Going from a 2 chord to a 1 chord is a very weak cadence. And that's not a subjective term I'm using. That's an objective term. That's what we consider. It's called a weak cadence. We classify it as weak. More of a strong cadence might be... That's a strong cadence, going from a 5 chord to a 1 chord. Another example of a weak cadence is just the plain old plagal cadence. Oops. And you can hear it kind of sounds plagally, right? It's right. So the only thing that's really helping us solidify where we are tonally is just always coming back to the D. Is we've had this chord progression repeat itself several times, and our ears have kind of just locked onto that, and we've accepted it so far. So that's why it seems to work. It helps kind of for the meantime ground us. But let's keep listening. I can see your love restrained. But darling, when I This is important. This is a nice important moment because this is a cadence pattern. Because we're going to have, this is a 2 chord. We really landed on a 2 chord this time. We didn't just walk past it. We didn't pass through it, so to speak. We actually landed on it. There's our 5 chord. So we had our 5 chord, and we boom. There's our 7th. Axel sings the 7th. Every kiss begins with K. Not sponsored. So this is a really important moment. This is the moment we finally feel grounded. We finally have a sense of arrival on the tonic. So this is a really important moment in the piece, and this is kind of helps our ears know where we are. Nice little suspensions, by the way. 2, 5, 1. Back to this. Back to this again. I should also mention the form of the piece. So the structure. Let me get it pulled up here. I did this. I went a little all out this time around. So this is what my analysis is of this piece. So, and these timings are based off of the original YouTube recording, not this recording. So just keep that in mind. So we have an introduction, and this is what's happening in all the pieces. So we have a piano for about 19 up to the 19-second mark, and then the drum kit comes in at about a minute and whatnot. Now we have a bunch of different sections here. You can see it's not exactly a simple, song form, so to speak. It's not a simple verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, or whatever. It's not as simple as that. It's a lot more intricate and detailed, so to speak. There's a lot more stuff going on, but at its core, it's pretty traditional. This isn't Bohemian Rhapsody that we are listening to, which is, by the way, I'd love to cover Bohemian Rhapsody in the future. So make sure you're subscribed down below so you don't miss it. All right, so where we are in the song right now is around here. So Axel came in, he started singing, and then we had our nice PAC. Nothing lasts forever in the cold November rain. Yeah. And then, actually, sorry, we're actually right here. So repeated verse, so A1 is what I call it. So we can think of big giant blocks of pieces of music. So that encompasses all the phrases, all of the cadences, all the stuff. So you can think of it as one chunk of music, one part of like one paragraph. That might be a nice analogy. One paragraph of the song so far. By the way, I wrote this in here on the A verse, elided. That means kind of combined, like overlapping, so to speak. Is the introduction is elided into the A verse, the A section. In fact, I would almost lump all of this together as one unit, as one paragraph. At least that's how I hear it, because the chord progression remains the same. It's just going da 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 da, right? It's pretty consistent. Now you might think, well, I mean, right when we go to nothing lasts forever in the cold November rain, you might think, hey, wait, that's a new section. That's different. And you are right. It is different, but it's closing material. It's not in itself new. It is, you can think of it as, we have really fancy words, like an antecedent and a consequence. For example, you can think of the sentence, I went to the store, comma, and I bought a gallon of milk. You can think of it something like that. There's da 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 da. There's a question and an answer to the phrase. And that's what I feel in this piece, at least at this moment right here, is the PAC really solidifies the conclusion of this phrase, the conclusion of this big giant block of, this big giant chunk this paragraph of music rather. So, and then we repeat it, and he's singing different lyrics, but underneath it's the same. We're doing still the same chord progression. We're still doing all that. So harmonically, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed except the words. That's it. Let's keep going. Gosh, playing with a ring on, by the way, is so hard on the piano. It's so distracting. So again, back here. 5, 1. Now, right here, this is new. This is new, and in my analysis, you'll see I mark this as a B, right at the 3-minute 22-second mark. This is a B. This is clearly new material. We haven't heard this before. And all they're doing is, you need some time on your own. They're just going back from a 4 chord to a 5 chord. Just flip-flopping back and forth to it. You need some time on my own. You need some time all alone. No, you know you need some time all alone. That's all they're doing. That's all they're doing. Simple stuff. And then at the end of the phrase, they stay, I need some time all alone. They end on a 5 chord. And that has a lot of anticipation, right? Because our 5 chords, say it with me, want to resolve to the tonic. Let's see if they do that. Let's see if they do that. On your own, do you need some time all alone? Everybody needs some time on their own. Ooh, baby, you need some time all alone. 5. Hang on. That wasn't a 1 chord. We're expecting this. All alone. Right? That's what we should be expecting. That's not what comes. What is that they're playing? Let's listen to that again. 5. Whoa. Okay, so what was that chord? So here we are on the dominant chord. That's a D sharp major chord. How is that in relationship to B major? Well, if we play a B major chord, or a B major scale there's our 3rd. So it has 5 sharps. There's our 3 chord. Now, that's what they're playing. They're playing a 3 chord. Now, here's the big question for us. What's the job of a 3 chord? Got any ideas? It's not a subdominant chord, right? It's not a tonic chord, and it's not a dominant chord. So what does the 3 chord do in music? That's been the debate for about 3 centuries, is what in the frick does this chord do? Well, it sounds good. Yes, it does, if used correctly and used in the right way. It sounds shit if you use it incorrectly, and it sounds really clunky if you use it incorrectly. Guns N' Roses uses it classically here. They use it, it's the quintessential, they do it perfectly. They just follow the rule book here. And the 3 chord is a predominant in some regards. It means it comes before the it's the predominant, essentially. So it prepares the predominant, which in itself prepares the dominant. So it's like a chain. It's like a chain reaction, right? So that would be like some typical cadence or chord progression. So if I just play it, let me make something up. Let's see. Excuse for parallel fifths and stuff. Let me think about this. Okay. No, that's horrible. But yeah. So that would be like a typical chord progression using a 3 chord, right? There's our 3 chord. And a 3 chord really wants to resolve to a 4 chord. The issue, though, and with 3 chords, I won't go too much into detail, is they need to resolve in what's called contrary motion. So the top note needs to resolve downwards, usually has a descending line, while the bass ascends. So the bass is going up, and the top line needs to come down. That is the case in Bach, if we use the 3 chord in Bach, or in any kind of 4-part voice leading or counterpoints, any kind of really technical academic stuff that you find in all sorts of music, all sorts of classical music. It's the same thing that they use here. You have to listen to how Axel is singing. He's coming down. Is you have that trajectory. That doesn't work, does it? I know it's hard, or something like. No. Now here's the big trick, though. To the scholarly of you out there, you'll notice I have parallel fifths. Yeah, that's something that you need. That's why you can either omit it. You have a little bit of a plagal cadence right there, right? Right? 4 chord to a 1 chord. 3, 4, 1. By the way, if you like this sound, go listen to the Friends list, Constellations number 4. I can't play it right now. I don't remember it, but it's a beautiful piece, and it utilizes a 3 chord in a very subtle way, just like they do here. Let's keep going. Guitar solo. So we're back to the A section. The reason we're back to the A section is because the chord progression is exactly the same, right? It's just we have a guitar solo. B, it's this section, right? Five, 4 chord. So that was just a little interruption. Now we're back into A again. This extension of the guitar solo. You can think of all of this as like one unit as well. You can kind of cobble it all together if you want. Actually, even all of this. So we're right here. So we're still in the A section. Still one chunk. All right, so right here, I got to pause it. So right here is what I call, I didn't know what else to call it. I call it closing material because it is closing material. I mean, it's new material. It's different. We haven't heard it before. And I call it closing/cadence material. I like to think of it like you would find at the end of the exposition of a sonata, like a classical sonata, where it's trying to wrap up all the themes, it's trying to kind of close everything, but it's starting to sound like the end of the song, right? So let's listen on. Right. With our 5 chords. 1, 5, that's 5, 4. Then nice PAC, and then it ends the song. And then that's the end of the song. Now, at least we have to remember, listening to this on the first, we have to pretend that we're listening to this piece for the first time. For us, that's the end of the song. If the song ended right there, which it could have, I think all of us would have been perfectly happy with it ending right there and not thought any more or less of it. We've been like, yeah, that's a great conclusion to a song. Yeah, just all done. We can go home. But if a composer or a songwriter chooses, no, I want to add like a stinger, like a last little, you know, think of a speech, right? Think of like a really engaging speech, and it's like the punchline. It's like a coda. It's what's called a coda in music, by the way. Is just the last little final sentence to kind of end off strong. It's optional, just kind of like an introduction. Traditionally speaking, is optional. You can just start with the material straight away. Your main course. You don't have to have appetizers. You can just start on the main course if you want to. And the coda I like to think of as dessert, like kind of a nice little the dessert at the end of a piece of music. The food analogies work so well, by the way, in music because we can all relate. But we end in B major, right? So the closing, right? So right? We end here. Then so we're not expecting, this is new. I have to admit, I love Slash's guitar tone. Oh yeah. Yeah. All right, Slash, you could have spent a little bit more time in the practice room, buddy. Ugh, maybe it was a long night for you. Oh man, that was a little rough. Give him. Gosh, they've been playing for what, 40 years? Okay, I should give them a break. All right, all right. So let's get back to the piece. So we open up with this little figuration, and we're not in B major anymore. Right? We end. I'm filling out the harmony, by the way. Oops, right there. So we're in B minor. Now this is really interesting. I'm not going to kind of put any kind of, I'm not going to plant any seeds in your head in terms of the meaning, but for those of you who are so inclined, you can take a look if you want to analyze like the meaning behind the song, or perhaps maybe the music video. Take a look at the music video. I guess the only kind of hint I'll give to you, like a little Easter egg, is since we are now in minor, we ended in major. Major is bright, it's hopeful, it's sunny, it's cheerful, it's enlightening, it's uplifting, right? And then suddenly the coda, we end the song in minor. It's like a reverse Picardy third, almost, in that kind of sense. So And actually, it's at this moment that, in at least the music video from what I can recall, this is where the funeral takes place. So I'll let you guys comment down below and let me know what's the meaning behind that. What do you think? What do you think is the significance behind that? We went from major then to minor, so it's much darker. It's much less hopeful. It's much darker, but it's not immediate. And the chord progression they're using, you probably have heard this a million times in your life, right? So this is the classic 6-7-1 chord progression. You hear it all the time in rock music, all the time in pop music. It's been around for at least 50 or 60 years, if not longer. I mean, it's been around since practically the birth of rock and roll. I mean, we're talking Chuck Berry, those guys, Bill Haley. I mean, so a little fuzzy on who else was around. Maybe Elvis. I haven't listened to too much Elvis, if I can be honest, but you know, it's been around for a while. You listen to a lot of those that music, it's there. So, so they're just sequencing back and we're just sequencing through it, and you can sense there's a build happening, right? It's building. It's going to be building. There's going to be a really big outburst. Well, there was a really big outburst. Let's listen to that again. That build. I love the guitars kind of just. By the way, in here, I should back it up a little bit more. I love when the guitars come in. Cha-cha-cha! It's like these little explosions of ta-ta-da, ta-da, I'm here, ta-da, I'm here. It's very subtle. I like it. Crescendo. Yeah, so let's go over this. So this is what I'd like to spend a little bit more time looking at is the very end of the piece. This is my favorite part of the piece, is this really rewarding, really fulfilling coda, so to speak. We're gonna get a little theoretical here. Let me pull up my yeah, we're going here. All right, so I've written down the chord progression because this is absolutely fascinating of what they're doing here. This is not your typical chord progression that you've got here. So we're in B minor. So of course I'm filling out the implied harmonies, so to speak. So let me walk you through what I think is going on. And again, this is not, they didn't do this, right? They just are using their ears. I want you to keep all that in mind. This is just me presenting to you an interpretation of how our ears could hear this music. So just keep that in mind. We could hear this in B minor, and I'm 99% sure our ears agree with us. Like, yeah, we're in B minor. We feel like this is home. I think you agree with me on this too, because we do have a dominant chord. We have a 5 chord right here, right? So, because we're always returning to this B minor chord. The reason why I'm being a little skeptical on this is because it's a very weak cadence that's coming back, right? We have this, and I have a different analysis of this that I'd just like to touch on after this. So why does this chord progression work? Well, to be honest, I don't know. But I'm going to try to help explain what I think, why I think it works. We have a 1 chord. Well, before I go that, let me back it up. So I wrote down these scales, right? B melodic minor. So let's just take a look at B melodic minor. So why am I playing B melodic minor? Well, if we take a really, really close look at the chord progression right here, here's something I noticed, is you can harmonize so they're using all the tones of the melodic of the ascending melodic minor scale. So all the what am I trying to say? They step outside the key, but they are within the tonality. That didn't make any sense, did it? The big chord the big chord that really sticks out is this chord right here. This E major chord. You might be thinking, no. The next chord is the one that stands out. No. Here, hear me out. If so this G sharp, right, does not belong in the key of B minor. Doesn't belong in the key of B minor. At least not technically, it doesn't belong. Yeah, sure, it belongs in the melodic ascending, but we use that to how do you say this? You use it as a melodic figure rather than a harmonic figure, right? We use it to make nice melodies. We use it for melodic writing rather than for writing chords with. I hope that kind of makes sense. So this E major chord is supposed to be E minor, and it works perfectly well, by the way, if you change it, right? That's a cool, that works just fine on its own. But because we have a G sharp right here, this kind of throws a wrench in the chord progression. And what I think it is, well, what it actually is, it's modal mixture. I won't go into detail on what that is, but it's super cool. You're basically borrowing from the B major. Because in B major, we do have this B sharp, this G sharp. Yeah? So we do have this G sharp here. And this 4 chord is a major chord. If we're in minor, it's a minor chord, right? Right, there's our 4 chords, minor. If we're in major, we have a G sharp. Oops. There we go. So it adds a little bit of brightness to the chord progression as a whole, and it feels kind of uplifting. And I write in parentheses Dorian. It has Dorian inflection to it, right? Because if we're in B minor, so that's what it is. Now we then get a 3 chord. Again, hey, cool, that 3 chord comes back. In this case, it's in major. It's a major 3 chord. So we have an E major chord, then a D major chord, which, by the way, is just following the descending line. You know. And then it just continues on. Now, the best way I can think of analyzing these last 3 chords is it's just a continuation. It's just, right? And all of this stuff, is is extending. It's elongating this. This was originally right at the very beginning of the coda, right there. So that was the main material. They could have just riffed off of those 3 chords until the end, but they didn't. They added the whole rest of the chords progression in front of it, and I'm really glad they did, because wow, man, I love this chord progression. It is juicy, 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 juicy. Yeah, it's nice. Now, what else do I want to say? Last note of mine. You could, and I just want to touch on this briefly because I don't think this is at all how we can hear this. We could hear this in D. And we could hear the first chord, right? Yeah, as a 6th chord. And then a 5, 6. And then things get a little messy. Then a 2, right? A 2, a major 2. Right? Because E major. 1, 2. Because we're in G, if we're thinking we're in D. Again, it should be minor. Whoops. But it's E major. I'm not convinced that it is. The only reason you could think of it like this is it helps explain these last 4 chords a little bit easier. It helps make sense of it. So if you just look at those last 4 chords, it's just by themselves, it's very clear that we're in D major. You might be thinking, no. We ended on a B minor chord, you dingus. And I'm going to say, no, that was a deceptive cadence. Because watch, if I just change that last chord to a D major chord, then clearly we're in D. So I'm just going to play the last 4 chords, but just the last chord, I'm going to play as a D. So listen. As opposed to what's already written. So it just helps kind of explain the last 4 chords. It gives them some context. So, do I think that's how it should be analyzed? I don't know. It's up to you. But those are my cases to present. And on the last little bit, the last chord, by the way, I should just, because they just kind of riff off of that until the very end, right? Is this nice B minor 9th chord. So that's the end of the song right there. They don't do it in the live recording, but then you have that nice suspended B fade out at the very end, which I think is just lovely. Yeah, I think, wow, this has gone on for long enough. So I tell you what, I will call it there. And with all of that said, thank you all very much for tuning in. That's my music. I'll turn that off. So, thank you all very much for tuning in today, and I hope this was useful. So again, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like. It really does help out a lot, and subscribe as well. So, I will catch you guys all next time. Take care.